Good morning. Welcome to the City of Keystone Heights Special Council meeting this morning. I appreciate all of you being here. If you could please turn off your cell phones. Ms. Ratasky, can you please do a roll call?
Mayor Rodenwall,
Here.
Vice Mayor Thompson,
Here.
Councilman Brown,
Here.
Councilman Hart,
Here.
Councilman Lewandowski.
Here.
You have a quorum, Madam Mayor.
Excellent. Do we have any public comments?
I have no comment cards today, ma'am.
Okay, today we are having a workshop to discuss, as you well know, our Ms. Rakowski has put in her notice. Her last day of employment here is January 10th, 2024. We have 13 applicants that we have received the resumes on and information for us to look at, review, and bring us together today to discuss and identify decisions on interview process, next steps moving forward. Anybody from council have any comments before we get started?
Not this time.
No, I don't.
Gentlemen? No?
No, good.
Okay. Well, certainly, Lynn, thank you so much to you and your team for organizing this for us. It's quite a few. I'm really proud of the fact that we have 13 applicants, and they're from all over the place, which is great. I think it gives us a really good scope of, selection process. And, I hope that it's going to be a good discussion that we have today as we decide who is the right person for the position.
Madam Mayor, if I may, as you go through your conversations, your discussions today, please make sure that your microphones are on and pulled down so we can capture the audio. Thank you. I promise.
Yes. I guess what I'll do by first is kind of going through what I did. We were provided the job description, which was public, updated job description, which we all had input in adding to it since it hadn't been refreshed for a few years. So we did include some additional qualifications that we were seeking. I looked at it like, in all fairness to all candidates, to take those key qualifications from that job description and create what I call like a spreadsheet listing some of those qualifications, or many of them, up to, I think I have 32 identified. Everything from education, which was key here, to also the different levels of qualification, knowledge, and a variety of tasks. The city manager position is very multifaceted. A lot of folks do not realize that. It is a high level of responsibility. That is the role that really makes our city tick. We come together to make decisions about changes within our city and ordinances, voting on specific things. But the city manager and her team are what really make us stay alive every single day. So they have to have knowledge on a big variety of, things that go on in the city. Everything from parks and recreation, the power going out, which we experienced apparently last weekend, day-to-day things, folks coming in here with challenges, etc. So they have to have a fair amount of extended knowledge in order to know where to start. And so I think the job description was really quite thorough. And I think today, we are offering a salary of $65,000 to $90,000 for the candidate. It was a position that was launched nationwide. So we do have applicants that are from out of state. But, I think with that being said, it really does give us an idea of maybe helping us to find the right person for right now for our town, okay? And so on these qualifications, what I did is I created a spreadsheet and I think I had 32 individual qualifications that's kind of summarized by education, core qualifications, and down to office skills, which is also very key. I identified a grading scale of 1 through 5. They have a 1 if they don't qualify at all for that. So if they know nothing about QuickBooks, for example, it's not on their, and again, we're basing this on their resumes that they submitted and their application, they got a 1, meaning they don't have that experience. All the way to a 5, let's say if they were City manager certified, they get a 5. We added military experience, they get a 5 if they have military experience. We know there's a strong discipline and a lot of knowledge with government operations in that role. So it went from that range to in between to being satisfactory or, very satisfactory. So that's how the grading goes on these different qualifications. And so I took each person, got up and took all their information together of that one individual, focused only on that individual, read through all everything they provided, everything from the letter to the resume to the application. And then I just kind of go through my spreadsheet and immediately go and grade. And then once I came up with my score, I moved on to the next person in the stack, in the list that we had. So it did take a couple of days. It takes a little time. I think it's important that we spend the time because we are going to make a decision that's going to affect our city and the way it runs. So it's a very important decision. You guys have anything to add about how you may have gone through your process?
I wasn't nearly as thorough as you were, but I did read through all of these, and what I was looking for basically are these points: education, as you mentioned, not necessarily in municipal work, but a business background, someone who knows how to deal in that world. Municipal experience, very important to me. Character, what has the person done in the community? What awards have they received? How have they been evaluated by their peers? Military experience, I think that's important. And then just a general quality of the resume presentation. How did it read? Did the person spend time to actually put it together? Was it a coherent document, or was it just sort of throwing something up against the wall? Those were the things that I looked for. I did not score. I started using your score sheet, very good, but I found it just a little bit too cumbersome for now. I think when we actually interview candidates, something like that will be extremely important.
I spent 2 days on it. A lot of information to consume. So
It is overwhelming.
yes, it is overwhelming. But I've narrowed my search.
Good, excellent.
So, I'd like 2 things to say. First is, I think we should decide who we're going to interview. And
Right.
so today, rather than give scores or anything like that, I'd like to propose that we have 3 groups. We have those that each of us think we must interview. They're just so good that we have to interview them. Those that maybe we should interview, and those that we're not going to interview. And that be our focus and our result today. And then we have that discussion, we finally decide who we're going to interview. So I just want to throw that there as a proposal for our result today. And then the second thing is, and this is a little bit verbose, I'm sorry, but I grew up in San Francisco, and I love to tell my students, if you wrote a description of San Francisco and you're sitting or standing on the Golden Gate Bridge, you're going to write one description. If you're standing on Alcatraz and you're looking at the city, you're going to write a second description. And if you're up at the top of Coit Tower and you're looking down on the city, you're going to write a third description. So are these descriptions going to be the same? And the answer is no. Which one is right? They are all right. What is the difference? Perspective. Each one of the 5 of us up here have our different perspectives. And we're going to come up with different conclusions. And that's okay. That's the way the process should work. And so if I don't agree with Steve and he doesn't agree with Tony and et cetera, that's good. That we have our different perspectives. And so I just want to remind us of that we don't have to have groupthink. We don't have to all agree. We're okay with that.
Right.
Okay.
Mr. Brown?
Well, how many is this? 1, 2,
5.
fortunately and unfortunately, I've been involved in every city manager we've hired here since we changed the charter. I'm very simple, and I kind of went through everybody. I'm an early riser, so I'm at my office at 5:30 in the morning, and I took the past couple of days to read over these. So I scored them a 1 through 5, and I've got the ones that I want to interview, and then the ones that I don't want to interview. And so that's, I mean, and I agree with Mr. Hart that when we get through this, then we get a score sheet, and then we can go that way. And I think that's how we did it before, was a score sheet that way. So I just say let's get the ball rolling.
Yeah, well, in the past, each council member gave their top three, and then there was a lot of overlap. And then you really discussed what wasn't the overlap as to whether or not you want to interview that individual.
Could I suggest, rather than 3, let's do top 5?
I think, well, we have 13.
We have 13, yeah.
And I looked at top 7
Top 7.
is based, and that was based truly on the scoring, the way, the differences and the way it dropped the cutoff.
I don't have 7, but
Yeah.
that's fine with me.
I
With
do
a
have a
large
question about the
field.
one that is out of state. If we were to interview him, would that be left up to us to pay for their travel and housing?
We could do a Zoom, couldn't we?
Usually, if somebody's interested in the job, they understand that appearing for an interview is part of the process.
Yes.
Okay.
I have a question. Can we do Zoom meetings on these screens? Can we,
Not those screens, but we'll bring in additional television for that.
okay.
We can do them on our laptops, okay?
Well, yes, and some of that will be with the sound system, and so we'll bring in
Yeah.
additional means to be able to accomplish that within the interview process.
Well, do we want to start off with our first choices and go from there?
Sure.
Okay. So, and this is based on my scoring, numbers 1 through 7. First choice is, his name is Elman Lee Garner. Second is Jeff Shoebridge. Third is Michael Esposito. Fourth is Jeremy Marshall. Fifth is Charlie Van Sant. Sixth is James Cuneo. And number 7 is Sean De Palma. Anybody else?
Do you want me to go through mine?
Sure.
Not in any particular order, other than the way they appear on the page. Dylan Bennett. Provisionally De Palma. Garner. Hatch. Shoebridge. And Van Zant.
How many was that, Steve?
6, I think.
6?
Yeah.
So you said Bennett, De Palma, Garner, Hatch, Van Sant, and who else?
Schubert.
Shoebridge.
Gotcha.
Bennett, De Palma, Garner, Hatch, Schubert, Van Zandt.
Is that who you used?
No, that was Steve.
Okay, so you
Or
were
no,
just,
yeah.
pairing.
I was just
Okay.
parroting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is somebody keeping a comprehensive of this? I'm not.
Yeah, I'm writing this down.
Okay.
Good, because I'm just gonna, I did not rate top to bottom, but I do have the candidates that I would be interested in hearing from.
Mhm.
I did not rate them 1 to, as, I didn't use the scorecard.
Okay.
So it's Sean De Palma, Michael Esposito, Elman Lee Garner, Jeremy Marshall, Jeff Shoebridge, and Charlie Van Zandt.
Okay.
I only did my top 3.
Okay.
Bennett, Garner, Van Zandt.
Okay, Mr. Brown?
Okay, I got Palmer, Shoebridge.
Shoebridge.
Is Espetito,
Michael Esposito?
yeah, that one in Gardner,
Okay.
5.
Any discussion amongst you guys?
So I did interview searches and I actually made a couple phone calls. Mr. Esposito was the city manager in Crescent City until he abruptly resigned. He then got a job as a city manager in Georgia. On May 3rd of this year, he again abruptly resigned without notifying the city council. He did agree to stay on till the end of June while they searched for a new city manager. Yes, he's got lots of experience as a city manager, but I need someone I can trust and someone who doesn't come to a city council meeting and abruptly resigns. I mean, Ms. Ratowski has been very professional, and she's upfront and told us everything, what she plans to do. That's the kind of person I want to have as my city manager. In my opinion, Mr. Esposito does not fulfill that requirement.
And to jump on that one, I did note short-term as a city manager on here. I
Right.
like his background, but I did put in red the short-term. That is very concerning because
Any thoughts from you?
Did anyone else do research on De Palma?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So what did you find out, Dan?
Did anyone else find out he was fired for harassment?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So again,
I don't know about the harassment part. Did you make a phone call to find that out?
no, I have been.
Because it's not written.
Right, right. That's the kind of thing that is not normally written about.
I understand that.
He was
but-
fired,
Right,
okay? And that's one of the things that I think that we should do also is, for those we interview, we need to call references,
Definitely.
okay?
Mm-hmm.
Right? But I have heard through contacts of mine that that's why he was fired.
okay, so you heard through contacts.
Right, so that's something
Who are
that would
those
have to be
who are those contacts?
I'm not gonna publicly say.
I'm
who
not
that is.
asking for names,
No.
I'm just asking, did you call the actual place he worked?
I
and speak to
will
somebody?
say I have a respected informant, and that's all I'll say,
Okay,
okay? Now, people make mistakes, that's something we definitely would need to verify,
mm-hmm,
okay?
mm-hmm.
But it is a major concern for me.
So I kind of went a step further, and I always, you never know what you're going to find on Google, right? And discovered exactly as Dan has relayed to us. Also, it is published, the firing. I also watched the council meeting when this came down and was decided and voted on. The city manager is the one who fired Mr. De Palma. But they have 595 employees under an HR department in that city, much, much bigger than us. And he was over, they call it quality of life director. He was not city manager, but he had a large job with all the parks and recreation. That was what his role is. He's very, very accomplished in that role. He's very knowledgeable, very, very impressive background. There were 3 reports that they conducted and investigated. Their HR did this, and this is all public on the web. that, in the statement I see here, the file shows a number of human resources complaints from his subordinates, folks that reported to him, accusing him of abusive behavior and treatment. So they investigated all of them and came to the decision that it was inappropriate, and they had to come to the decision to let him go. There was a huge backlash from the community because he's so well liked. That's some of the meetings that I watched with citizens coming forward to support him. Very likable person, but it's unfortunate, you know, and this whole thing with ethics, you guys, we have a really small town, so relationships are so critical. And that person that reports to our city manager has to trust them. They have to, you know that they have the confidence they're gonna be treated correctly. So I too feel the ethics thing is a big deal. And there's even a letter from Mr. McQueen, who recently also left in September, down there, or over there, the letter that was publicly made about him being released. Anyway, and I think the records can be acquired if we want to see something deeper. But again, like you said, if somebody we're going to interview, we probably ought to do a background check prior to the interview on any of them. But anyway, that's what I found out. Okay, so do you agree then that we can strike Mr. Esposito and Mr. Cuno off our list? Yes? Yes, Tony?
Mr., who
So I
else?
thought we were talking about the Palmer.
I'm sorry, De Palma. I'm sorry. I'm looking at the wrong man here. My goof.
So Mayor, maybe it'll,
I will jump in. I don't remember which time it was when we were hiring, but we did have one that was from South Florida that had some questionable things. And we decided not to even bother interviewing.
Correct. I'm just saying, right. So that's what I'm saying. We've all kind of said who we picked, and he was one that I picked, so
I did too.
you know, if y'all are in agreement, then we would not interview him.
Yeah, I didn't pick either one.
Is that agreeable?
Yes.
Mr. Commando, you had a comment?
I was only gonna say it may be easier to cross off 6, 11, 13, and 14 as they received no votes from anybody.
Oh, okay.
And then if you wanted to, from the mayor's recommendation, eliminate 3 and 4,
4 and 5.
I'm sorry, 4 and 5?
Okay, what are we doing?
Who we crossing off again?
6.
Diploma and SPF.
Volka,
4, 5, 6.
Well, 6,
Yep.
11, 13,
Welber,
14.
and Wilson.
14.
right.
Okay.
Those had no votes from any council member.
Okay, and then we.
Easier to keep track of, thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
And then number 3 and number 8 only had 1 vote each.
So I would recommend we cross off Cuneo and Hatch.
I don't agree with that.
I don't agree with that either.
I do.
And I do too, and I know this is recorded, and I'm just gonna put it out there. Before you were here, Mayor and Chris, and I don't know if Steve remembers, but we've had an issue with one of the candidates that is in the city limits. And my thing is, when you come up before this council and you basically tell us that you're gonna do what I wanna do, you know? I have a problem with that, and I'm not working with somebody like that. And I'm not gonna mention their name, but they're in here, and it's one of the two that we're talking about right now.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Okay.
I would
Because
like
there's 2
to,
names mentioned.
I would like to say that I didn't find any qualifications
No. Yeah, me neither.
that qualified that candidate to, or that person to even qualify for the job. Anyway, that's my,
Tony, I recall the incident
Story.
now that you mentioned it, and it was pretty much trying to find a workaround from the ordinance and so on and
Yep.
so forth. And
Yep.
they just went ahead and did it anyhow.
Yep. And why would I personally could not vote for a person like that,
Yeah.
for a city manager that did that, but yet their responsibility is to make sure our ordinances and our charter is followed.
So we're in agreement that number 3 and perhaps number 8 should be stricken, is that,
I don't agree with striking number 3.
okay, all right?
So, Madam Mayor, at the moment, then who's with what is remaining on the list? I will say that through your initial tallies, we do have Mr. Garner, Mr. Van Zant, both received a vote from everybody, and then we have Mr. Shoebridge, who's received 4 votes, or 4 tallies, if you will.
So it appears that's your top 3.
Yes.
Huh?
It appears that that's your top 3 collectively.
Is Mr. Garner, Mr. Vincent, and Mr. Shoebridge?
Yes.
Yes.
And it's clear too, there's no one left on the list that's even close.
That's correct. But
I-
from your initial tally.
Yeah, I would like to make a pitch for someone that really we haven't talked about. It's Dylan Bennett. If you take a look at his resume and what he has done, being a certified paralegal, founding a youth, basically a youth organization of a college or law school fraternity, PAD. The fact that he's an Eagle Scout, the fact that he's local, he's got education, he's obviously quite bright, quite motivated. And even though he doesn't have direct municipal experience other than being on planning and zoning, which I think is important, I think I would like to talk to him. I have no qualms about someone who doesn't have a lengthy resume as far as city experience, as long as the person has the intellectual horsepower and the energy and knows the people. He also stated in his resume he had no intention of leaving. He's a local guy. Not that that's important. We can't base this on whether or not it's a homer. But I'd like to talk to him. So I would strongly urge that we keep Mr. Bennett in the queue.
Comments?
Well, we haven't decided how many people we're going to interview
No,
either
we
yet.
haven't. Not yet.
So, I mean, an interview, I didn't find the qualifications required for him. I heard what you just said, and I think that we could talk. So, I mean, I'm okay with that. We haven't decided exactly how many people we're gonna talk to, so.
But the ones that
But I
got the
think-
5s, I'm totally in agreement with.
Yeah.
Garner, Shoebridge, and Van Zandt.
So I'll just add that I'm agreeing on the 3, Garner, Shoebridge, and Van Zandt. And if we want to increase that to 4 and add Bennett, I don't have any objections to
Thank you.
that.
The only thing I had to say about Mr. Bennett, I love his veracity, his excitement for the city, his energy. But when you look at the real detail, and again, I'll go back to, it's a huge responsibility. That experience is key. We have a brand-new city clerk that's just learning everything for our city. And we're in a situation where we have to find the right person for us right now. And I don't feel that he qualified under really hardly any of the qualifications that are in the job description. He has a really interesting background, and I know that he's on the way to something, a path, and feel like he will be, you know, as he finds whatever that is, he's gonna do great. But I didn't feel like he was the right person for now, and I agree, we can certainly interview him. I've met him just the other night, a super nice guy. But again, I was very focused on those 2 things right now, and what's the most qualified person that we can get in here, who hopefully will have the longevity. Like you said, we don't want a revolving door. And we've been really lucky, because Lynn has really taken care of us for a long time now.
Lynn,
So-
I'm sorry. Lynn, could you refresh my memory? How long has Mr. Bennett been on P&Z?
He's had 2 meetings.
2 meetings.
Yes.
All right.
So-
I won't ask you for an evaluation. It's too soon.
And they're appointed by council, so I will
Right,
not
right.
give that to you. But, Madam Mayor, if I may just offer my 2 cents, though it's the city manager that you're looking for. You did a fantastic job hiring your city clerk. She's learning. This is, within the first couple of days of her experience here with the city of Keystone Heights, and I hope for the city's sake and for her sake that it's a fantastic mesh, and that she's going to do amazing if this is her home, when this is her home. And I'm confident that it will be. However, understand, again, as was stated before, that she is brand new. And prior to when you hired a new city manager, you had an experienced clerk who's coming into that assistant role that's been here for several years. There's a lot of processes and procedures and a lot of ways that people can, or that cities can get in trouble, and a lot of things that are going on behind the scenes. I'll give you examples. There's conversations on septic to sewer, there's conversations on parks and recreation, there's conversations on how to spend money through TPO with roadway projects. And there's a lot of government that's involved, that's behind the scenes, that takes up your 60-hour work week. So when going through these applications, I strongly encourage you to keep that in mind, as you'll need somebody who can get you through those processes and carry out your vision for the city, but be able to push that through the tape that is Florida statutes, regulations, and the proper procedures for that, and quickly. Because
In other words, we need to keep somebody who can hit the ground running.
we'll hit the ground running and understand, possibly have a knowledge of how that works.
Right.
Right, so it's like being on another planet. You know, you have this career, I'm in healthcare, right? All of a sudden, I'm gonna be a lawyer, and I'm plugged right in. Yeah, I got a great background, I got great education, but could I be plug and play right away? Not even in 6 months, probably not. You know, we have kind of double whammy, brand new clerk, which is great because she's got a lot of knowledge, that's why we selected her. But I feel like when we look at it, we've got to just remove anything personal. We've got to look at what is in front of us on paper. That, as we well know, the interviews play out, and who is the head person that we want. And that was the purpose of really doing the effort and work that we put into in the last couple of days to come to that decision.
Based on this conversation, even though I'd like to see Mr. Bennett talk to him a bit, based on the conversation, I don't think we need somebody that's green as grass, even though he would have longevity and he would work out in the long run as an excellent
There's no
candidate.
doubt, I think he would be 100%, but he would be like a deer in headlights.
We would encourage him to
honestly,
stay
the
with P and
background.
Z.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't have a problem if we not talk to him.
So we have Mr. Vincent, Mr. Shoebridge, Mr. Garner.
Mr. Marshall has not been removed from the list yet either.
Huh.
Or he hasn't been discussed.
Yes, so I have to,
Yeah.
and I had him down also as a top candidate. Mr. Marshall. So he was at City of Valley in Valley, Nebraska for 1 year. Town of Farmington, New York, he was chair of the zoning board for 4 years there. Let's see. He doesn't have any Florida experience, but he has 5 years of city government experience, not necessarily in Florida. That's important, guys. So he's definitely out of town.
To me, Mr. Marshall is completely out of touch with our community. He referenced in his cover letter Mayor Lake.
Yeah, true.
So he's not even correctly identifying the government here.
Yeah.
He talked about a police department in his cover letter. He is so disconnected. He has no idea what the local issues are. I could not rank him at all.
No.
Well, I have to say though, Dan, a lot of these people that are putting their submitting resumes, they don't absolutely live here. And, I mean, you know, if they've been a city manager, that's what we're looking for. It's not somebody who knows everybody.
He also bounced around. He was in New York, and then he went to Nebraska,
Well,
and then he's back in New York.
I'm not saying anything about that, I agree. But, I mean, not everybody is gonna know this town and everybody in it when they get
No,
here.
you're right.
And that, I think it's important to go by their qualifications, not who they know.
Well, but I think when you make a huge mistake, like identifying the mayor as Mayor Lake.
Oh, I saw that
Oh,
too.
my
I caught it.
goodness.
It's
I
not
would-
that-
I'm
it's-
still new.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
that's
you're
not.
not that new.
Let me throw out one more spin on this. He has absolutely no touch with Florida law, Nebraska. Some concepts are the same from state to state, as I've learned from Wisconsin to here and so on. But he would have a long learning curve to learn our sunshine law and all the intricacies that go on in the state of Florida. Not only that, he doesn't know the people, doesn't know the city, and his resume, you know, is not up to par. So I would say let's not consider it.
At the same time, if there's one of the five of us that really wants to advocate for him, I'd say let him interview. But right now, I would say no.
I think he'd be wasting his time and ours.
It's not to have a local preference, but I think if some of you have gone to the international city and county managers type conferences, one of the strongest things you hear come from them is when you talk about the government and the Sunshine Act. The fact that we have to be open with and disclose everything is just shocking to people
Yep.
in the 49 other states.
That was a big difference from Wisconsin to here. Wisconsin has a sunshine law or the equivalent, but it's very wide open.
Just to understand, there is definitely a learning curve that goes along.
Yeah, yeah.
So does anyone want to advocate for Mr. Marshall?
No?
No.
Sorry, that's me. Again.
So do we need a motion to decide who we're going to interview?
So who have we got it down to now? What candidates? To Mr. Garner, Mr. Shoebridge?
We got it down to,
You can decide by consensus, you don't have to have a motion.
Okay. Cuneo, what did we decide to talk about?
I don't think we talked about Mr. Cuneo.
We really didn't.
No, we
no,
No.
I've got him.
But you
as a-
can.
as a no.
Yeah, I'm a no on him.
I'm a
also.
no too.
yeah, me too. But we can talk about it.
Well,
Because you had a, no?
I move that we schedule interviews with Mr. Garner, Mr. Shoebridge, and Mr. Van Zandt.
I like that.
I'll second that.
Okay. Mr. Garner, Mr. Shoebridge, and Mr. Van Sant.
Correct.
Okay.
All right. Now the fantastic question is, when would you like to do that?
As soon as possible.
What are they doing this afternoon?
I would rec,
At least I gave you tomorrow.
if I may, because we have such a short week between Christmas and New Year next week, the first of the following week, and then depending on how quickly this goes, and hopefully it's as seamless as it was with our city clerk, you might be able to have a contract on the 8th. It's an aggressive timeline, but it's one that it's very possible.
And I'm trying to remember I believe all of them were available pretty quickly. I'm trying to remember Mr. Shoebridge, what he had on there.
Maybe just start throwing out dates, like, or is anyone available the 3rd, 4th, or 5th of January?
I'd like to propose the 3rd.
Yeah.
The 3rd to do the interviews.
Yes, ma'am.
Wednesday the 3rd?
I agree with that. January 3rd, right?
Yeah.
Right.
What time would you like
Good
to
for
start?
me.
I like 10 o'clock in the morning. I think that's.
Well, so if Mr. Shoebridge, where does he living? He's in Cape Coral. Or no, I couldn't tell where he was. He went to Cape Coral High School, but he was in Reddington Shores, Florida, through June of this year. He was town manager there.
So is that Panhandle?
I did discover some information about him that I'll share. Apparently, there was a job evaluation that did not go well for him. Out of 3.17 out of 5,
Mhm.
saying that he barely met the expectation rating. The mayor there, she was disappointed in him missing deadlines. Now, you know, everybody has a story, right? And he's really very well qualified. And you never know, things fall through the crack. You may have had folks that you depended on to do something, and then it gets, you know, you're the guy with the mud on your face, right? So this is just public information. I did watch the YouTube video on the discussion through council about it. But I don't believe it says he's there through June of this year, so he's not there any longer. So it's fairly recent. But it might be something, you know, we can chat with him about, right?
That's a good point.
Right? So, anyway, that was something I wanted to share.
He didn't make my list because my worry is it's a step down. He'd be making less money. And this might be just a holding spot before he tries to move on to something bigger and better.
Were you able to find his salary?
Um,
I didn't see it.
I
You know,
think,
But that's common among this
In this type of
profession. So what
profession.
happens
Yeah,
is,
that's what I
again,
thought.
when you go to the League of Cities or you go to the ICMA conferences, it's pretty well understood that the shelf life of any manager is from 3 to 5 years. So
And
you
he
see
is
the-
also the only candidate that I think may have had one other that was ICMA certified.
And that's not the end all be all, I'm just telling
No,
you
no,
that.
it's not.
I think that there are a number of people that I've experienced in my career where they end up taking jobs for lower pay because they enjoy the work, or sometimes it adds into their retirement, sometimes it's a healthcare benefit. I think there's different factors from a benefit standpoint that people look at.
And he's got 4 years of city management experience in 2 different locations.
But it sounds like you have good questions to ask him.
yeah, I think you're kind of leading into a comment I'd like to make, and that is that I have a lot of questions that I'm going to want to ask these candidates. And so, as opposed to our 1 hour per candidate that we had for the city clerk, I'd prefer almost 2 hours. I really want to sit down, I really want to talk to these people and ask a lot
very
of
important.
questions. It is to me. This
You could do
position.
10 to 12 as a 2-hour block, and then 1 to 5 as your other blocks.
I like that. I don't know how the rest of you feel.
What's that, what did you say again?
So you could, if you were gonna do 2 hours per candidate, you could do 10 to 12, and then 1 to 3, and 3 to 5.
Yeah, it's fine.
Right.
If it is sooner than that.
I mean, it's a long, drawn-out process, but I think
it's
it's
okay.
too important.
Yeah.
So how are we going to do this? Are we going to
Meeting on the 3rd.
submit our questions, or are we going?
So I think we ought to talk about that.
Yeah,
Good idea.
I think we absolutely should talk about that. We only have 3 candidates, we have
Yes.
2 hours. And I like the idea of us scoring on specific things, maybe, based on what we did earlier. But I really like the idea that each of us, based on what we read, we have specific questions for that individual. Because it is pertinent to that person and because of the nature, because that question wouldn't be asked to the other person, right? And so I know in the past it was me creating that question, and then we went off of a, standardized questioning, things that we submitted. So I think it's up for discussion on how do we want to do this.
I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel. Let's use the same format we used for Stephanie, and each of us submit 3 or 4 questions and
If
have at it.
you want to submit 3 or 4 questions per applicant, and my suggestion would be just make sure that you get all of your questions to me ahead of time so that we can create those sheets again. But if each council member wants to submit 1 or 2 questions overall to talk about general experience with processes and procedures, and then submit each your own questions per applicant, because that's going to trigger some conversations as well.
So, in keeping it simple, I know we had like 10 or 12 questions. We did the same thing with the airport manager that each of us submitted, and that question was asked, those questions were asked to each candidate, which we graded.
Mhm.
In addition to that, you have those, say, let's 10 of those questions for all of them to answer the same question.
Correct.
And then say, first candidate comes up, he gets asked those 10 questions, and then we submit questions specific to that candidate, and then those all go on his questionnaire.
Correct.
And we grade based on how he responded to our individual questions. Does
I
that
would
make
believe
sense?
so.
So in other words, those 4 or 5 questions would be on candidate number 2's questionnaire. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Make sense?
Mhm.
Is that fair, do you think?
Mhm.
We just have to think about, as we dig through, what would we want them to tell us
Yeah.
about them individually?
Do we want to reserve a little bit of time just for free range questioning?
Yeah, well,
Follow-ups.
Yeah, follow-ups,
that-
looking at the resume, what
Yeah.
did you mean by this,
Yeah.
rather than,
I think we're certainly
Yeah,
did
I
that
think we can
last
do
time, I
that.
think, so they could elaborate.
So if we're looking at Wednesday, the 3rd, and with the holidays coming up, then I would ask that questions, we're looking at a pretty tight timeline, but if questions can be submitted by Friday, the 29th,
Okay.
that way it'll give a couple of days to collect those, put those together, and make sure if there's any duplicates that the appropriate question is being asked. asked. In that way, if there's a little bit of wording on individual questions, if Tony has one way of asking it and Dan has another, then there's make sure that you're comfortable with those questions that are being asked.
Okay, so then the goal would be that we come up with, let's say each of us comes up with 5 standard questions, let's say. And we get 5 standard questions.
Come up with what you're comfortable with.
Or
Okay.
whatever.
I-
Yeah, it could be 5, it could be
Conservation.
whatever, because Lynn's gonna take them and, if we
Well-
ask the same question, combine it, right?
And I'll tell you, in the conversations with the city clerk, I think that there was one question that was asked by everybody. And so there will be duplicates.
Okay.
So submit the questions that you want to that you want asked by everybody, and then their individual questions, so we can put those on the scoring sheets, and you have everything ready for your meeting.
Okay, and then, per candidate, I'd say Mr. Shoebridge, and I'd have my questions, you all do the same,
Yes.
and then you put that as part of that packet for
Yep.
that individual. Okay, I think it's good.
We will be asking the same question to every candidate, correct?
Yes, for consistency.
Because we are not going to
For the
set
first,
them aside, set them apart from everybody else. We're not going to
so what we're saying is.
interrogate.
No, no.
I think we're
So-
gonna call it an interview.
Well, you know, you know what I'm saying.
So, just to make sure I think we're clear, is they will all get a certain set of questions that we've identified that every candidate gets asked.
Right, okay.
And we'll grade them
Just
on
like
that.
we did
Just like we
for the
did
clerk.
before.
Okay.
And
But
there
the
may
last
be
time-
follow-up to that based
Right.
on the response.
Right. But the last time I submitted separate question for the candidate specific to that candidate that was asked to that person. Each person had questions from me that were about their personal,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So
Right.
this time, all of us are gonna do that, in
Okay.
addition to our regular standard questions. Does that make sense?
Yeah. One suggestion that I have, and I think Mr. Shoebridge was the only one who did it, he actually provided a copy of an evaluation when he was city
I saw
manager
that.
in Minnesota. I think that was very, very good. And
Yes.
I don't know how we would research that. I would imagine it's public records. If Lynn, somebody on your staff could contact these municipalities and see if you can get recent evaluations. Because these are really peer reviews, and that's important. That's just as important as references, in my view. But also, as far as references, I think we need to check out references.
I would encourage council to check out references on each applicant, but understand that you have one individual who has been retired for a little while.
Mhm.
So,
He may not have a review. We haven't done formal reviews here on a regular basis, but it'd be good information to have, and I was very impressed by Mr. Shoebridge providing that information and the results of his reviews.
Are you talking about Mr. Garner?
No, Shoebridge,
Shoebridge?
yeah.
Mr. Garner is a current town manager up near Tallahassee.
Yeah.
He's, town manager at, Sneed's. But Mr. Shoebridge, his position ended June 2023.
He was a town manager in Minnesota for a cup of coffee, but he's also been back in Florida.
Correct.
Yeah.
Mr. Van Zandt did provide his military performance reviews, so we have that.
So the interesting thing is all 3 gentlemen have military experience.
So that means when we have a storm come through, that they'll follow up like our previous, or not previous yet, our current city manager, and have their tails out there cutting trees and with the public works.
We hope so.
And I go off, and like I've said, I've done this. I fortunately am blessed that my gut can tell me after I've talked to somebody what kind of person they are, and if I trust them, and if they're going to do what they say they're gonna do. And yes, we are spoiled because, our city manager we have right now, over the 12 years that she's been here, is out in the storm. She's in the events and she's out doing that, and it's gonna be very, very hard for us to find somebody that's willing to do that. But that's one of my pet peeves. If you're gonna work for a small town like this, you're gonna wear many hats. And I'm gonna expect them to be out during a storm with our public works.
I think we have to be a little careful about ageism here, because one of the candidates, if I recall, is probably a contemporary of mine. And I don't know if I'd be out crawling around with a chainsaw in the middle of the night. I might, but maybe not. But I don't think that can be a qualification specifically, because I think.
No, it can't.
It's
we
not a
can't do that.
qualification, but it's one of the
It's a-
darn things that I look at.
Yeah,
I mean, this is a small town.
And you're talking-
going to have to do what you got to do. to
you're
make
talking
things work.
resourcefulness, and I agree with that,
So,
yeah.
Mr. Hart, you brought up, we need to do reference checks. Rather than all five of us trying to call all the references for all the candidates, may I suggest that one of us each take a candidate, I know there's only 3 candidates, but be responsible for calling the references and reporting on what we find out.
That's what we did for the prior city.
I'll take the easy one. I'll take Van Zandt.
Okay,
Let me take Mr. Garner.
okay? And who wants to call about Shoebridge?
Now, this is not calling the candidates, this is calling their references.
Right.
I can call about Mr. Shoebridge, if you all feel that's appropriate.
Sounds good.
Okay? And we need to have that done by, before the interview, right? Let's see.
Yes.
Are we gonna ask for written references or verbal? Can we just report what we learned on our phone conversations?
I think that's sufficient.
Safest from a legal standpoint.
Yes. Yeah.
And how will
Is there
will
like
that
a
information
form?
get passed to each and every one of us? Because we have to do it publicly. So how will we know about the reference calls? And when?
Why don't you'll talk about it in your meeting?
Yeah, so like the first 5 minutes before we actually invite the candidate in to answer questions. So at 10 o'clock, we talk about the references and what we found out. Then at 10:10 or 10:10, the candidate comes in and we begin the interview.
Is there a form that we could use to keep us on focus on asking consistent questioning? As, you know, as we go through that process for each reference?
I think I'd rather just freewheel it.
Well, I think then we kind of come up with, who knows what, when you got too many people doing it.
It's so
There's gonna
subjective.
be a form.
It really
It's
is.
gonna be
people would use.
subjective.
It is.
Huh?
It's subjective. I mean, what happens if you find out something that you didn't know?
Well, I mean, if we're gonna do a reference, I think we have to give consistent information, so, oh, I didn't think to ask that, you know what I mean? I'll look today and see if I can find a form of some sort that's used for references. Just to give us a guide. We can do whatever we want, but I think it'd help to have a guide.
Yeah.
Or we could just do it open-ended. You'd call the reference and you say, this person is interviewing for a job with the city. What would you like to tell us about this?
That's the
person?"
best approach.
And if you just do it, leave it wide open like that, you're not suggesting anything, they can say whatever they want, or whatever they're allowed to say, and you don't.
No.
and I've been approached from a previous, city manager we had here who was going for a job somewhere. And that's basically, they had a person that was doing references. He had put me down for a reference, so.
Well, when I talked to the fire chief for our prior city manager, I just left it wide open. Said, how do you do it? And he gave a glowing report.
I just think about it from an HR perspective, so I think about it like that.
Yeah.
But that's fine, y'all can do, but I will use some kind of a way to do it,
Sure.
consistent. Okay, I think we're good. Lynn, I will have everything to you before Christmas, because I'm.
Because you're out of town.
Yes, until the 1st.
Okay. So I have just sent out calendar invites to all of council regarding a reminder of when questions are due to be submitted back into City Hall, and then also calendar invites for the interview. We'll be here all day on Wednesday. Right.
Wow, that got done faster than I thought, less than an hour.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yay.
You just turned it on.
We did great. We did
Yeah.
great.
I guess we'll make a motion.
Yeah,
Oh,
you
I'm
did.
sorry.